Hello, Bleeders! This is your host, Courtney Kosak, and I am back with another awesome episode of your favorite writing podcast. Am I right? I hope I'm right. I am actually currently working on a really helpful new series. It's called What to Expect When You're on Submission, because that is something I'm going through right now, and it is a circle of hell that I am trying to get us out of. So I am going to try to help us all at least maintain our sanity with a bunch of advice from other writers and people in the publishing industry who I love and respect. So that is coming at you very soon. I've already done a bunch of interviews for that. But first, before I start releasing that, I have to finish my memoir in progress. I finished my first full draft of it that feels like everything that needs to be in the book. I finished it on my birthday, actually, September 30th. Really beautiful synchronicity. And I'm going to go on submission with that in a few weeks. It's syncing up with an exciting byline that I have coming up. I'm very excited to tell you about all of this, but I'm writing. I'm busy writing. So I am dropping another rerun today. This is pretty much back from the very beginning of the podcast. It's one of my very early episodes with Chelsea Martin. Chelsea, much like Chloe Caldwell, the last episode, and they're actually friends, but they both had an incredible DIY kind of publishing experience. They did a lot of indie publishing in their early careers that kind of landed them on the map. And Chelsea's Cockadolce essay collection is one of my all-time faves. And she has a new novel out that's called Tell Me I'm an Artist. And her work is just so good and so uniquely her. And she's awesome. So there's so much to learn from her experience. And that is why I am very excited to share this interview with you today. And make sure you stay tuned into the show because, like I said, I have a lot of really fun stuff coming down the pike. So wherever you're listening right now, just hit follow or subscribe, or on Spotify, there's like a bell button so you get notified of all of the upcoming goodies. And in the meantime, here we go with Chelsea.
I was getting my first book together when I was still in college, but I kind of never had that thought. Like, I was putting together what I thought was a chapbook of just like my favorite things I had written in my classes in college, basically. And I had contacted Future Tense Books because I loved their chapbooks. And so he was like, yeah, Kevin Samsel was like, yeah, let's put something together. So then I started collecting things, and it just turned out to be like a lot of things. And he was like, I don't want to cut much of this. Let's just do a paperback. And so I never really had the thought of like, I'm writing a book. I just thought I was doing like a fun little chapbook.
Today's guest is Chelsea Martin. I absolutely adore indie queens like Chelsea. She has been incredibly prolific thus far, and I love the just do it energy she brings to tackling the literary scene.
I was moving around a lot. Like, I moved to LA, and then Elizabeth, actually from Short Flight Long Drive, invited me to live in her spare house in Michigan. And so we had just moved to LA, but we packed up and left and went to Michigan. And then I just worked on the book there. Like that, I was just like, I'm treating this like an art residency. I'm just gonna write until this book is done, and then I'll start worrying about money again.
I found Chelsea's whole writing and publishing process super inspiring. We talk about how to balance perfectionist tendencies with being productive and putting out a lot of work, how to deal with a shitty publisher, the joys of having an agent, and more in today's episode. There's nothing to writing. All you do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed. Welcome to The Bleeders, a podcast and support group about book writing and publishing. I'm writer and podcaster Courtney Kosak, and each week I'll bring you new conversations with authors, agents, and publishers about how to write and sell books.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Martin, and I'm the author of Tell Me I'm an Artist, coming from Soft Skull in September 22.
I am so excited about Chelsea's upcoming novel, and her essay collection, Cockadolce, is one of my all-time faves. And in this episode, we're going to cover it all. Well, we are going to dive into your prolific body of work, but first let's start with the lightning round questions. So, when did you first identify as a writer?
I think I've always felt like a writer. I don't know. As a kid, I would always be writing little books and illustrating them and loved reading and always wrote poetry and stuff. I went through a period in high school where I really didn't like literature. I had, I think, really bad English teachers in high school, and also just the books we were reading were really uninspiring and made me kind of resent reading. And I don't know, like Romeo and Juliet, like I think is a big like I moved a bunch, so I got 3 sections of Romeo and Juliet in my freshman year of high school.
The semester that keeps on going.
Yeah, it was boring, but also it's just so like the conversations were always the same and always like this is something like kids your age could possibly relate to, but it's in this context that you're not going to understand, and we'll tell you what it means, and there's a bunch of symbolism that will tell you what it means, and it's just so like alienating. And I just like was like, okay, this is not my thing. I don't like reading like this. This isn't fun. I don't want to guess what the author is trying to do constantly. And so then in college, I found it again. I went to art school and I had to take, literature and creative writing. And I really got back into it because we were actually reading cool stuff that I was like, this is cool. This is like entertainment. This is what I want.
What kind of writers like turned you on? Because you're kind of like an alt, right? Or like you have an alt sensibility. So I'm curious who you were like, oh yeah, this is the shit.
I mean, in college, it was really like, I don't know, like Borges and Milan Kundera and Italo Calvino. But I was also introduced to George Saunders and Kelly Link and Laurie Moore, and I just found all of them so exciting.
Like across the board.
Yeah, just like people doing so many different things and for so many different reasons. And it was, very inspiring.
On that note, what's your all-time favorite book?
If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler by Italo Calvino.
Okay, explain.
It's like a really bizarre, fun novel about this character who's reading a book, and then the book is like misprinted, so it starts in on another book, and you read sections of both books, and then he's like, I have to find the rest of this book. So he goes on this like long thing, and you read like 10 other excerpts of different books, and they're all totally different. And then it's also like a love story. It's just really fun. I have read it several times in my life. I'm sure it's like the most read book I have, and I always love it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What's your like dream fantasy writing routine?
My dream is to have 2 houses. When one of them is in the mountains with like snow, and I'm there all fall and winter just writing away. And then in the summer, I go to my city house and I just have fun, and I don't worry about writing, and I just live my life and have a total break. And if I feel like writing, like, of course, but there's like zero pressure, and I'm just like, spending time with my friends and family.
I love that. Have you seen Severance?
No, I keep hearing about it.
Oh my God, though, it kind of posits a similar, you're like, oh man, if I could separate my writer self from like my real self. And they're kind of like, if I could separate my work self from my regular self. But I like yours.
Totally.
It doesn't work out for them, but.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
Okay, so what's your real writing routine?
My real writing routine is I like call the babysitter and have like schedule her to come over, and then work for like 2 hours if I can get into the headspace, which is actually pretty hard in that amount of time. So not a lot of writing, and that's pretty much it. When I was like really deep into edits last fall, my husband took a bunch of time off work, so that's how I managed to edit. But yeah, with a kid, it's very tricky to make the time.
Does it make you more? I mean, because you're like, oh man, I'm like paying this person. Like I gotta
Yeah.
feel like you have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, usually. Sometimes not, but initially it definitely did. Like when I was like, oh, writing these checks, gotta make this worth $400. But also just like being a mom, I think is kind of a push for me too, because I have a total fear of becoming, a non-writer because I'm too busy wrapped up in my kid's life. And so I feel like afraid of that, and it makes me focus more.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
What is one piece of writing that makes you jealous you didn't write it?
Okay, you sent me this question and I was like, I don't feel that way about books.
Anything? There's nothing that you're like, damn, they did this thing that I do, but like they did it really well.
Oh man. Well, it made me think of this tweet I made that I said I wish I wrote that, which is this old Am I the Asshole? About this guy who's like a lobster farmer or something. He's like goes on a boat to get lobsters or something, and then he's like, my roommate wants me to stay home for Christmas, but it turns out his roommate is the mother of his kids, and they're also together still. And then he's like, another point is that I just bought this meat slicer that I need to pay off. It's like 2 paragraphs, and it's so complicated and weird, and just everything feels so disconnected from the next thing. But it's so funny and weird, and I loved it.
Where did you find it?
It's just an Am I the Asshole thing I found on Twitter.
Oh, it's just like a piece of writing on Twitter?
Like, do you know Am I the Asshole from Reddit?
No.
Oh, it's this great section where people go to ask if they're the asshole in certain situations.
Oh, it's a Reddit post?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
That's my greatest aspiration.
I know. Hey, some Redditor out there that has no idea you just made their day. So let's dive into, you have so many books. I'm curious though, when you first thought like, I want to write a book, and you thought you could do it, because you've been doing it kind of your like whole adulthood, right?
Yeah, I was getting my first book together when I was still in college, but I kind of never had that thought. Like I was putting together what I thought was a chapbook of just like my favorite things I had written in my classes in college, basically. And I had contacted Future Tense Books because I loved their chapbooks. And so he was like, yeah, Kevin Samsel was like, yeah, let's put something together. So then I started collecting things, and it just turned out to be like a lot of things. And he was like, I don't want to cut much of this. Let's just do a paperback. And so I never really had the thought of like, I'm writing a book. I just thought I was doing like a fun little chapbook.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. Everything was fine until whatever. What's the premise? If you're gonna put a premise
Lord.
on it.
Well, it's like a collection of really short fictions and illustrations, and I mean, man, I haven't looked at it even in years, so I wouldn't know.
It was really fun.
Oh, good.
I was like, she's a weird bitch, but I love it.
Oh, good. Love weird bitch vibes.
Okay, so it just sort of happened that you were making the thing. Did he do an edit round with you, or was it just sort of published as you put it together?
I think it was pretty minimal. He might have cut a few things. Actually, he did cut something that I really wanted in there, but then it was in another book. So yeah, I don't remember much editing, really. It seemed pretty much like whatever I wanted.
Uh-huh. So there's a bunch of stuff, like weird stuff about motherhood in there.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I know, it was really interesting. I'm just curious if like, were you consciously thinking about that, or it wasn't really like that?
I mean, I think I've always like been interested in the idea of motherhood and like that relationship, and the idea of like making a person and being their mother is just bizarre to me. So yeah, but I don't remember anything specific I wrote, so I'm not sure what I could say.
Shit, I should have flagged more of them. I have to say my favorite part is the very tiny part on page 64 where just in the tiniest wording ever you wrote, I accidentally shat on a person once. There, I said. But you have to like squint to see what you wrote. It's amazing.
Whoa. I wonder if that's true. I bet it is.
So, really fun book. You just kind of like put it out, and then what was the reaction after?
The response was pretty good as far as I remember for being on such a small press and me being nobody that anyone had ever heard of before. I mean, I think, it's not a book for everybody. It's weird and disjointed and like very young feeling. So whatever. But I mean, I was happy with it. I had zero expectations of it. I mean, if you'd asked me, I would have said like I would love to publish a book, but it wasn't like on my radar really at that point. So it just felt like, I don't know, a free move or something.
So then the really funny thing about Apathy, am I right about that? That came out next in 2010?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's the premise of that one?
So that one is stories that are written around paradoxes. I was really into Oulipo at that time. Have you heard of that? It's like this writing movement from like, I don't know, a long time ago. It's like writing around constraints. So like there's, I think the most famous one is like a novel written without the letter E at all. Oh. So like any word with an E wouldn't be in the book. I was really into things like that, or like, having like a strong structural constraint that you're working around. So that's what I was doing with the pieces in that book. But they're also, written in my kind of world of like being a young person and figuring things out.
And then when did that like start to come together as like a book idea? And like how conscious was that process? Or were you like, oh, I want to do that again after everything was fine until whatever?
So one of the pieces in that McDonald's is Impossible is one that was rejected from Everything Was Fine Until Whatever, which was like one of my favorite things I had written. And I really wanted it to have a place in a book. So I had these other pieces that I had written. I think maybe I had written them after I put the book together, but maybe at the same time, I'm not sure. But I just worked on them more so that I could put together another. I mean, that book's super small too. It's a chapbook size, but paperback format.
And it was same, right? Also future tense?
That one's Sunny Outside.
Okay. And how did that connection happen and come together?
I think the same way. I think I just emailed them and was like, I love your work and I love what you're doing. And if you ever want to work with me, let's do it.
I love that.
Yeah.
And they were just like, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how that happened twice. It seems really weird to think about now. At the time, I was like, that's normal. But like now I'm like, weird.
But I think, like the genuineness of it. I don't know. Did you go through like an extensive editing process on that one?
No, it was also really minimal.
And then Even Though I Don't Miss You, is that next?
Yes.
And that was like, I didn't write that one down, 2013-ish?
Yeah, I think so.
It's out of print. And so it costs like fucking $50. I emailed you about this, but it costs like $50 online. I was like, she's made it. People are fighting over these books.
That makes no sense to me. Yeah, just if you're listening and you want it, just email me. I'll give you a PDF. Don't spend $50. That's too much.
I was very impressed. Oh, yeah, it did come out in 2013. Okay, so what's the premise of that one?
So that is sort of like a long kind of breakup poem in short prose pieces.
And where did the idea come from? And like, when did you kind of like start working on the draft?
I had a bad breakup around then and I started writing about it, but then we got back together. So it was all good, but I kept going with the idea and kind of like fictionalized it and elaborated on things. And I was working full time then in a really crappy job. And so I was writing a lot as like a way out of that too, and just kind of like escapism into a bad breakup world. That was like probably the first book I wrote that I was like, I really want to write a book and I want to finish this piece and make it a real thing. And the publisher for that, Elizabeth Ellen from Short Flight, Long Drive, I had met her and she kept encouraging me to send her a book to publish. And so I also had that as a motivation. Like, I have a publisher already. I need to just finish this.
And did you and her do a edit together on that one?
I really don't think so. I don't really think I was edited much early on. I think people were just like, sure.
I did an episode with Chloe and she was mentioning how you and her have been kind of like neck and neck your whole journey. Like she did or you did something with Future Tense, which she loved. And it was also like, who is this girl? And then she did something shortly after and the same thing with...
Yeah, it's pretty cool to have her kind of wrapped around my publishing experience because I always can go to her with like questions or like, what the fuck? Or like, did you experience this?
When did you guys meet and like become, you know, even if you were aware of each other's work, but when did you guys like connect?
I think we first met after her book came out with Future Tense, but I don't think we really kept in touch. And then we met a couple more times. Well, I think once we were both on Short Flight, Long Drive, because Elizabeth is really into touring and likes to take her authors on tour. And so we went on tour together and really bonded doing that. And yeah, I spent a ton of time together. And that was, I think, really solidified our friendship.
Yeah, it's cool to have someone like that on your journey.
Totally.
Okay, so then similarly, Mickey, your novella that came after that in like 2016 is about a breakup. Another real breakup, or what was happening?
No, just loved talking about breakups. I don't know. I feel like there's just something really like pure in that kind of space of like being like separated from somebody and you thought you were a pair and now you're alone, and there's just the loneliness and the like existentialism, and I was just finding that really interesting for a while, so wrote another book about it.
How did this like, what was the whole writing process with this one?
So this one, I was moving around a lot. Like, I moved to LA, and then Elizabeth, actually from Short Flight Long Drive, invited me to live in her spare house in Michigan. Oh. And so we had just moved to LA, but we packed up and left and went to Michigan. And then I just worked on the book there. Like that, I was just like, I'm treating this like an art residency. I'm just going to write until this book is done, and then I'll start worrying about money again. So I did that. And yeah, it was awesome and very weird. And it was just like living in this house with very little furniture and just like sitting on the floor wrapped in a blanket, like writing.
That's amazing. That's such a like little romantic.
It was like, yeah, ideal. It was perfect. I still can't believe how lucky I am that I just got to take a year and a half off. I mean, I did end up working from there, but.
And Elizabeth published Mickey as well?
No, so I published that with Curbside Splendor, which is a publisher out of Chicago, who actually ended up fucking me over. So.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, like he didn't honor the contract and never sent me royalties. And so I was just like, had months of like just emailing him and trying to get and having my agent email him and being like, you owe me. It's not even that much money. Just give it to me. And he just kept being like, okay, check's in the mail. Yeah, sending it out. He just kept doing that over and over. So eventually I took to Twitter and like made a big stink about it. And he ended up sending me the rest of the books, which is like, whatever. I'm happy with that. But it was definitely a bad publishing experience. My worst publishing experience. It's like being with a publisher who's just like not honoring what the agreement was and not communicating honestly.
That sucks. And there was no way to like avoid it because it seemed above board beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, the contract was fine. The contract was good and we signed it. But like, what am I supposed to do as take him to court over like $500? Like it doesn't make sense. And I feel like he knew that. And it's just like, what are you going to do?
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
And then I am freaking obsessed with Caca Dolce.
Thank you.
That's an essay collection.
Mm-hmm.
Came out in 2017. What's the premise of that one?
So that one is just essays about growing up, becoming an artist, kind of like, small town
Family stuff.
family stuff, not having money. It was kind of a reaction to most female essay collections, which are like rich girl in New York. Like, I love those essays and I read them, but I wanted to represent a different kind of person and like, sadder, trashier details. And I was like, who's perfect for that? Me.
Well, this trash bag found it very relatable.
Fellow trash bag.
When did you first get the idea for that one? And like, when did the first kind of draft come out?
So I think like even in college, I was trying to write about my relationship with my dad and like all the weird things he did to me. And like, I was always trying to fictionalize it and make it something else. And it just never worked. And I just couldn't let it go. Like, I just kept trying. So eventually I was like, I'm just going to write an essay. I'm just going to get it out plainly and truthfully. And then once I did that, it felt like over for me, which was a very just freeing feeling because I was so wrapped up in it and like had such a hard time with it for years. And so the idea for the book came from that, wanting to incorporate more experiences into the, wrap it through and like why that was so important to me and what it meant based on like other things I had gone through. And so I just, went from there and just kind of like picked sort of the hardest things to think about and process and just put them on paper.
That's amazing. And then afterwards you were like, okay, worked through it. Check.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I suppose I should have just gone to therapy, but I never did.
No,
so.
the book is so worth it. This is the anti-therapy podcast. Just put it on the page. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it works just as well. And then you get a book to sell.
Totally. So who published that one and what was the editing process with that?
So that was Soft Skull. So that's the first book I had an agent for. So we were shopping it around to like all the big publishers and small publishers. We were just shopping it around to everyone that we liked. And we had sent it to Catapult, which is connected to Soft Skull now, but it wasn't at the time. And then while I was shopping the book, Catapult acquired Soft Skull, and Yuka Igarashi became the editor and had remembered when I sent the book to Catapult and just was like, do you still have that book available? Because I want it. Yeah. So it was wonderful, like, because I loved Catapult and I had worked with Yuka before and I loved her, and it was, very perfect.
So when you were going out with the book, the collection, what form was it in? Was it like fully, or at least a draft of what it is now, or was it more of a proposal?
It was a full draft. I had written every single essay, and Yuka went through and edited them with me. And I would say pretty good edits for this book. But I definitely had all the essays, in a form.
Interesting. Okay, cool. I feel like you won some awards with this one, and this one got a lot of attention, yeah?
I don't think I won any awards.
Maybe I'm wrong.
But it did get mentioned in cool places.
It got like a lot of indie recognition, I think.
Yeah. It was all over the place kind of. So, really happy with the book and got to tour a little bit. It's like the last time I traveled, really.
And then now your newest novel, Tell Me I'm an Artist, is also with Soft Skull, and that's coming out in September.
Yeah. Yes. I have a different editor.
Oh, yeah?
It's Kendall's story. Yuka had originally bought the book, and then she left to go to Grey Wolf and left me with no one. But then Kendall took over, and she's great. So really happy with how that turned out too.
Okay, amazing. So what's the premise of this one?
So this one is about an art student who is just figuring out what kind of art she wants to make, or whether or not she's really an artist. But she's already in art school and has, these friends that seem like they know their way a lot more than her, or are way farther along in developing their practice and stuff, and are, have like wealthy families and lots of tools at their disposal. Mm-hmm. And she's like also going through some family stuff. Her sister has disappeared and left the sister's son with their mom, who's, freaking out and doesn't know how to take care of this baby by herself. And so Joey, the protagonist, is kind of caught between these two worlds.
How close to real is this?
It's not my experiences at all, but I was definitely, working through real stuff, but just things that I, feel like I can't talk about openly. So I was disguising it in
different situations. Yeah.
Yeah, but that still feels like, I went to art school, and this does feel a lot like me. I feel like it's a little bit like method acting or something, where I'm just like, this is me now. What would I do if this was my situation? And just, giving her more and more crap to deal with. That was similar enough to what I was trying to talk about that I could like express those things.
So you'd already done a novella and quite a bit of fiction. So this wasn't like, a new process for you or anything like that?
Not exactly, yeah. I mean, it felt pretty similar to other books, only that it took way longer.
Yeah. So how long did it take, and then how substantial was the edit?
I took probably 4 or 5 years to write a first draft, and I had different ideas about it, and it changed and morphed over that 5 years. And I also was like super busy, like moving across the country, having a baby, getting married, lots of life things. So that definitely stalled me too. But my big goal was to have the draft done by the end of my pregnancy. And so I did that. And I can't remember now if it was 4 or 5 years, but really long for me. That's a really long time.
And then was it like one big edit after that, or what kind of overhaul did you have to do on it?
Oh, and then so once Kendall was involved, we did, I did a round of edits with my agent, Monica, before it even sold. And then with Kendall at Soft School, I think we did 3 rounds of edits. Nothing really structural or like huge, but lots of fine tuning and lots of like thinking about what connections were being made and making sure everything was lining up and making things as good as they could be.
Can you share about the agent situation? Did you query? Did she seek you out? And how do you maintain that?
Yeah, I was searching for an agent when I was done with Mickey, and she was one of the top ones. She was representing a couple of my friends, and I'd heard really good things about her. So she was one of the first ones I messaged, but she was on maternity leave at the time. So I never heard back from her, and then sold Mickey by myself. And then she came back from maternity leave, and I don't remember if she was like responding to my query or if she just cold messaged me, but she was like, "Are you looking for an agent?" And I was like, "Yes." And then it just went from there. I really like Monica Woods at Triangle House. She's just a very cool person. She's like my age, so we have lots of the same like reference points and just very similar vibe. Kind of very fun to hang out with her. So
it's just an easy relationship to maintain and work on and whatever.
Yeah, it's super easy and it's great. Like, yeah, I love having an agent, having someone be able to back me up and help me out.
You did a ton of stuff by yourself though. So like, I guess, do you have any tips on that other than just like go for it? Like send the email without thinking that hard about it? Or
I mean, that is advice I give a lot of just email the publishers you like it can't hurt. They'll always like that. and you could possibly form a connection that could be really cool. So I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. And yeah, I think doing it yourself is cool, and I think self-publishing is cool, and I don't think people should be afraid of that.
Just do it.
Just do it.
So your art is intertwined with a lot of your writing work, and it sounds like it was when you were a kid too, but has it sort of always been like that? And how does that interplay work during your process?
I feel like I've been compartmentalizing them more the past few years, like keeping them really separate, and I don't even ever really want to talk about art. It's like kind of annoying because now I've written a book about art, so I'm sure I'm going to be expected to talk about it more and more. But I mainly make money from art and graphic design and stuff, and so it feels more just like a job and like something that my heart isn't really in, and I keep all my creative energy for writing now. Lately, I mean, I would love to like do art again for myself, but it hasn't been that way, and it feels very, very separate.
That's so interesting. Yeah, sometimes it gets like that with your work stuff kind of kills the joy.
Totally. But I'm also always like, I enjoy this. Let's make money. Like, just with everything.
Okay, what's next for you? Are you working on anything now that you can share? And do you have any bucket list goals?
I would just love to write another book. I am sort of working on something, but it's been like a really tough year. I haven't written that much, and it's going really, really slow. So my goal is to just be able to finish another project at some point. Really easy goal, I would think, but
I love that. Yeah. Okay, so let's do the postscript questions. What's one piece of writing advice you wish you could give your former self?
So I think I would tell myself, like, as far as publishing, to just be more patient. And like with Mickey, I feel like I was just kind of scared that no one was going to publish it. And so I went with Curbside out of fear, and it backfired a lot. And I think, I would tell myself to be patient and let things sit a little longer.
One tip for writers trying to get a book published, or I guess, is that it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like kind of like similar advice. I think there's like two kinds of people who are like really in a hurry to publish, and people who want everything to be perfect and have their perfect publisher and their perfect huge advance and just wait forever for that. And so I think like kind of trying to avoid both of those extremes and just doing the best thing that you can do for yourself in a reasonable amount of time, and then moving on to your next project and like moving on with your life.
Yes. Perfect is the enemy of good. What's your all-time favorite piece of your own writing?
Tell Me I'm an Artist. It's so good.
You better pre-order it right now.
You better pre-order it. Come
on. Where can people connect with you online?
I'm a big Instagram person. I'm Chelsea_Martin_. I'm also on Twitter, somewhat.
Same handle?
I think it's _Chelsea_Martin.
It's a mystery, you guys.
Yeah. I think you could just search Chelsea Martin and you'll probably find me. Or you might find a belly dancer.
Oh, okay. Is there anything else that I should have asked you that I didn't?
No.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. This was great.
Absolutely. Thank you, Courtney. It's good to talk to you.
Thanks again, Chelsea. That is it for this edition of The Bleeders. If you missed the last episode with poet and professor Bridget Bianca, make sure to go back and check it out. Here is a little preview.
The professors would say, don't write for the table, and they meant it, and I should have listened, and now I listen more, right? I'm like, okay, now I see why you were telling me that, because I was trying to write to fit in, and it was working to fit in, but like it wasn't making me happy. So if anything, Otis taught me to follow my heart and follow what I believe is right, and to hear the critique, whatever, take it in or don't, but to still keep path with what I want to do.
I am so glad you joined me for this episode of The Bleeders. Writing is so much better with friends. I'm your host, Courtney Kosak, and hey, let's connect on social media. I am at Courtney Kosak, Kosak, on Twitter and Instagram. And make sure you're signed up for the Bleeders Companion Substack. The link is in the episode description. And I hope you'll join me next Thursday for another edition of Work in Progress with Emmy Olea. In the meantime, happy bleeding. Hey Bleeders, really quick thing before you go. I think you're going to want to know about this because I am teaching an upcoming workshop. It is through Write or Die magazine and Chill Subs, and it is called How to Build a Platform for Writers Who Shudder at the Thought. So if you are psyched out whenever anybody says you have to have a platform for publishing success, trust me, baby, I've been there and I have overcome. I built a platform somehow, some way, and I actually did it rather joyfully and painlessly. So I want to help you do the same thing. It's totally possible. No, you don't need to start your own podcast, but you can. Regardless, I am going to give you a bunch of tips for social media success, newsletter success, probably a bunch of stuff you haven't even thought about for how to build a platform. And I am teaching this all in a 2.5-hour workshop. It's on October 14th. That is coming up very shortly, so you can sign up with the link in the description, and I hope to see you there. But even if you can't be there IRL, it's going to be recorded if you can't make it at that time. And I send out a little PDF at the end. It's actually not so little. It's a pretty involved PDF so that you can make sure that you follow through on all this and actually build the platform that you mean to. And I'm just going to give you step by step by step so you can do it without wanting to walk into the ocean. So please join me if you are interested on October 14th. The link is in the description, and I really, really hope to see you there. Bye.